So we will now resume our committee of the whole. Going to ask for Jesse and Tiffany and your team to please join us back at the table. So for FY26, you are projecting $134 million spending. We know that with most major housing programs, as well as some of the rebuilds, it's going to take some time to get the money out the door. And so I just want to get an idea of what's the plan. And then I have a follow-up question, and I think it'll probably be for Dave Thomas, who's not here. I'll wait. But I know from Basic Systems Repair, we're talking about going to 100% AMI, which I know members were briefed on and had some concerns about. So we want to figure out how we can still protect those who are most vulnerable, but also be supportive of that person who may miss the income deadline by maybe $100, $200, but still protecting those most vulnerable populations. So the first part is with the $134 million in FY26, just getting an idea of how you plan to spend down the money, and then also Basic Systems Repair going to 100% AMI, and how we can make sure we're safeguarding those who are on a lower scale AMI-wise.
And just for clarification, Council President, are you asking about the FY26 DPD budget?
Yes, yes.
You want to talk about spending that?
I'm sorry, that's for the home plan.
Oh, for the home plan.
For
Okay.
the home plan.
I'm going to defer to Rob about the budget and
Sure.
spending.
Yeah, so the overall assumption about spending is that existing programs will be spent evenly over the year, over the next couple of years, and the new programs will start in July of 2026, and they'll be about kind of half of what the typical year spending will be, and then they'll ramp up. So within about a year or so, they'll get to their normal pace of spending.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And a question regarding basic system repair going to 100% AMI. I do want to say, just for the record, I want to be, clear, because I know I've heard this from time to time. We're not pitting the haves versus the have-nots with the question, but also as an agent of government, we just want to make sure that the most vulnerable population is also protected as it relates to basic systems repair. And we also want to support our constituents who may be over 100 or $200 over the criteria, and that they're supported as well.
Right. So as indicated earlier, Council President, and just for the record, I want to kind of give you the maybe FY24 figures that would help determine or provide how many folks are actually served. Over 3,000 households were served in FY25 at basic systems repair. As we're earmarking the number to be served in our home bond, it's more than double that. The 60% of AMI, as indicated earlier, that is something that is mandated by the additional funding sources outside of home plan. So we definitely have to make sure that we dedicate funds to that particular AMI regardless, because that is restrictive money that restricts how we put it out and where we provide that service to. In essence, adding on to this, we definitely want to concentrate on our 60% of AMI demographic there, but we are looking at it as the opportunity to expand because, as you indicated and as I indicated earlier, there is a need beyond that 60% of AMI, right? And we look at it as not necessarily that number that's reflecting what people have the availability to spend. You can easily be above that AMI, at particular AMI level, and have, be house poor. I mean, like, you don't have the ability to spend money on emergency repairs. Again, going back to what we have to spend on eggs and school supplies and everything else that was part of that opening, that is an important factor in understanding how disposable income is shrinking, right? So we're definitely going to be very strategic about how we implement the use of those funds over those particular over that current limit right now, because we have data that reflects that there is a need across
That's what I
the
wanted
board.
to know. Could you provide that data just for the record to say, hey, listen, based upon these programs, we know that we've turned down this many individuals because they didn't meet the criteria. Do you have that data to provide that justifies the need to go to 100%?
We can qualify that data for you in a written way to
just please
pretty much determine how many
chair.
people and where people have been priced out. I think that is a good point.
Per program that will be funded.
Absolutely.
And specifically with BSP.
We can provide that detail for you.
And that would be helpful. And I've dealt with that under AVI. I have a constituency who wanted to be a part of, it wasn't homestead because everybody got a homestead. It was Loop.
Yes.
And also senior citizens tax freeze, right? And it might be a person who's an elder, who I was dealing with, seniors,
Right.
because their pension was just a little high, but at the same time, they still struggling, just like everybody else. And so, just wanted to take a look at that.
And if I can, Council President, I also want to qualify again what I stated earlier. That 60% is as a result of being attached to the Housing Trust Fund, right? CDBG also has the ability to go up to 80% as well. So there is another kind of echelon for, additional affordability, additional income bands to be able to address here. So again, we would stay within the parameters of what those existing funding sources are saying. And when we present that data to you about who has not been able to qualify or as a result of their income levels, we can provide that information to you and make the determination or provide that information that says where people have been able to qualify at this particular AMI levels right now as well.
10, 11 years ago, when the mayor, of course, was in Harrisburg, she was the chief champion for Loop and ensuring that it not only impacted her constituencies, but as the head of the delegation, citywide. So that citywide focus didn't just start today. But I appreciate you talking about the Loop program and prioritizing seniors. And that's actually the impetus for this approach here, ensuring that we're expanding our scope and scale to ensure that we're helping much more Philadelphians than we are currently. But we definitely can get you those numbers, not just of the people who were on the wait list, but those who were turned down and priced out.
Yeah, that's the key one, the ones who were turned down, because if they're on the wait list, that means they qualify. But if you're
That's
turned
right.
down, meaning you don't qualify, correct?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
I think also, Jesse mentioned this earlier, through our one front door process, member or interested parties to all of these new benefits that are going to be expanded and those new, they will only have to complete one single application.
Yes,
That'll also,
streamlining it,
exactly,
yes.
and by streamlining that process, that will also help with our data tracking as well. So,
Awesome. Okay. The home plan includes over $3 million to fund various research and analysis projects. One of those is for $150,000. So why would we borrow money for research projects when we can just take it out the general fund? Like, why would we pay on a debt service for a research project?
Right. So, and as we talked about, the program has $1 billion in funding. So we have the borrowings, and then we have things like housing trust fund money, some of the federal money. So one of the things we'll do as we implement the program is figure out the right funding streams for each of the expenditures.
I'm ready to turn it over to my members. I want to get an idea, right? I know we're talking about pre-approving lists, right, for development of properties. And for me, there's no investment in the land bank, which should be a critical part of this process, right? And if we're going to spend down this money like immediately in the key vehicle, which is the land bank, we're waiting a whole year to do an operational assessment. Now, this is the actual organization that should hit the ground running. So I would think that if anything we're going to invest in is make the land bank scale up in staff and the whole technical team, because if members do decide to say, I'm gonna pre-approve 1,000 parcels of land, then I would think in order for us to hit the ground running, they wanna do this 30,000 preservation or building of units, in this case building, before, I guess when we run again, it's just 2027, that's the commitment. The land bank really don't have a whole year in my mind because they're a critical part of this plan, or aren't they?
no, they are a critical part of this plan. One of our approaches is around business process improvement. And using that model, we have to assess where's the best and highest use, right? So what that investment looks like. So we're doing that through an assessment, not a year-long assessment with a bunch of people at the table, thinking and not really getting to any results. We have an
So we have an RFP out right now for a strategic plan, making sure that the land bank has some clear guidance on where it should be activating properties and where it should look to activate the properties as well.
But it will also, that assessment is also looking at internally what that right structure is, right? And so we're working with Angel. We have a number of significant vacancies.
But can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
This gentleman used to run the RDA,
Yes.
right? We need another assessment to figure out if the land bank is I don't want to say up to par, but like, what are we doing an assessment of? When this gentleman worked for the land bank, well, he ran the redevelopment authority, which is essentially the same thing
That's
until we
right.
created the land bank and got rid of the vacant property review committee, right? And Angel, he's been around for a while, and I know he knows this process inside out. So I'm just trying to get an idea, what is the outside assessment person going to come in to do?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned them because they're,
And why wouldn't Greg why wouldn't he be doing it since he created the whole plan?
well, we have processes in place internally where we can't just give, a contract to.
Well, let me change it.
Sure.
Let me change it.
But why are we
And I'm
doing
just
the
trying to
assessment if they're
understand.
here?
Let me change it. Why wouldn't that be a part of the scope of work already for the Greg Heller group to do as a part of bringing somebody else out? I just think a whole year to do an assessment, because it says a year. So you said we're not doing a whole lot, but it says operational assessment will take a year. So if it's going to take a year and we're trying to get to 30,000 units completed, well, we're already in the close to 27 when that year starts. So I'm just
We're
trying to get some
working on,
clarity.
so that's a great question. We're working on parallel tracks. So we have I forget the number of vacancies. I know that you have that, and I'll give you that exact number in a moment.
17,000.
But we have, no, the vacancies in the land bank, in terms of staffing. So we have open positions that we have to fill. That's part one. That's on track one. On track two, we know that assessment needs to happen so that we can improve our processes. That doesn't preclude current, folks that we do business with from bidding on that opportunity, but we are not just going to give that to them. But they have, and you mentioned Greg, so I'll reference Greg Heller and Angel, have substantiated that an assessment is needed. So based on their guidance, we're doing the assessment, but the assessment doesn't take away from our forward progress. What it's going to do is enhance it. But Jesse comes from that department. Actually, his role that he left vacant by accepting the current role that he's in right now is a role that we're looking to fill, that we're working with our Chief Human Relations Officer to fill right now. But in terms of the land bank assessment, I'll kick that over to Jesse to answer that question with more specificity.
And I'm just saying, and I'm listening, the sense of urgency and how we have to spend this money because we're borrowing so much, I just don't personally think we have a year, and I just think that the aggressiveness on getting someone, because that's the key part that you're asking members to be supportive.
Absolutely, but I want to be very
of this
clear. The
process.
assessment doesn't mean that the work doesn't start until the assessment is done. What assessment is going to do is help to inform our approach. We're not going to wait until the end, until the full assessment is completed to make those improvements. We're going to make them along the way. That's that iterative business process improvement model. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to do the assessment. The changes are going to happen along the way. And we've done that in other areas as well.
So possibly what could happen is in the process of, let's say, folks say, okay, we support the 100,000 units to get started, right? And what we start off with agreeing to may evolve or change based upon the outcome of the assessment. Because the assessment is coming in the middle of an actual agreement.
It's going to improve it. But again, yes.
I just want to get some clarity on that. That's all.
Again, I do think that strategic plan that is currently out is important. We plan to enter into an agreement on or around, this spring with a third party to look at what the land bank needs to do to position itself appropriately to respond to the acquisition and disposition of land, right? There was a hearing. There was a series of steps that were taken up until now to recognize that there is a issue navigating through the land bank at different points when it comes to the application process. Understanding that a disposition policy that at this point was conceived of over 6 years ago and enacted in 2020 could quite possibly not be something that is universally a fit for all the different types of applications here. So we recognize that there are barriers in the application process. And to Tiffany's point, to Chief of Staff Thurman's point, we do not want to wait for an organizational assessment to dedicate our time and effort into thinking about that. But I do recognize where you are.
I'm supporting the plan, but I'm going to just keep it a bean. I just feel as though because this is such a huge initiative, we're talking about $1 billion, which we've ever seen in the history of our city, that we probably should have already been hitting the ground running with those staff and the assessments even before now, because we're on a time clock that we're trying to accomplish, that I support the mayor in accomplishing when her term is over with. So that's just my perspective. But yes, we can walk and chew bubblegum. At the same time, it's just very glaring when you see a budget based upon a housing initiative and the organization that members are asking to give up some level of discretion when it comes to the pre-authorization of land. I would just think that some level of just in good faith, I got 10 new staff that's going to be already hired, or at least in the budget, to bring on. So by the time the summer comes,
I'm going to be very transparent.
We're just rocking and rolling.
The assumption, there's an underlying assumption there that we were ready to do that last year. The government that we walked into was not ready to do that last year. We had to lay the foundation first. And so that's what we've done over the last year, the first 12 months. Now we're ready. But what we don't also want to do is to do an assessment just like other plans, and they just sit there and collect us. We had to make sure that we were ready. We're ready now. We weren't ready then.
I was just trying to get some understanding
of the
process, and it is glaring that it's not funded as a part of this initial process and a delay of a year.
But also, just to be very clear on the record, it's not going to take a year.
Okay, all right, cool. The acquisition fund for the land bank, is that only restricted to sheriff sales or private property as well?
That would be giving the opportunity for the land bank to exercise some priority bid. The way it's written right now, we look at it in a way where it does rely heavily on sheriff sales.
On sheriff sales?
Yeah.
But will it have the ability to also go after private-owned development that may want to also turn over property to the city as it relates to the work that we're doing?
We will allow for this to be able to, for them to do that with this fund.
Okay, cool.
I think Greg, you wanted to add something?
No, that was where I was going. We didn't put this in there specifically earmarked just for sheriff sale.
Could you update it just for the record so members of council could have?
You mean the document itself? We
Yes.
can make that change.
Oh, yeah.
The expansion of the responsibilities.
Yeah.
In the description, we do indicate, how plentiful vacant land is here.
Yes.
And we can make that correction to understand that it's not just priority bid at sheriff sale, it is for the opportunity to acquire vacant land outside of sheriff sales as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
and I just want to say we really appreciate that kind of feedback. If there are components of any of these programs that aren't clear or need clarification, and there are pieces that are important, please let us know, because we want to make sure that the descriptions really represent the reality and the priorities of all parties involved.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Craig. There's a significant investment in the Accelerator Fund, which I'm very supportive of, making sure that black and brown developers have an opportunity to have a seat at the table, because most of the time the usual suspects are building the city of Philadelphia. Do we have any data thus far, based upon an initial $10 million that was invested in the Accelerator Fund, the actual outcomes? How many developers actually utilized the program? How many units that were actually built to show the actual need to continue? I definitely know there's a need to continue investing in it. But just in transparency, what have we accomplished with the $10 million investment thus far?
Yeah. Well, we're happy that program is something that folks
Excellent
appreciate.
program. Yes.
It's a very valuable asset to the city of Philadelphia. And I see that David Langlieb is here to talk a little bit more about that data.
Thank you, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss it. Thank you, Council President Johnson. So David Langlieb, I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Accelerator Fund. I have some of that data for you. Of the $10 million that had been initially invested, partly in the form of a forgivable loan at 0% interest from the PRA, and $1 million in grant funding, that's a loan loss reserve that enabled us to leverage $15 million in private capital. So we now have 6 lenders in our syndicate, including 5 traditional depository institutions and 1 mortgage guarantor who invested $1 million in us as well. From that, we've committed or deployed a little over $11.5 million of that. We have credible pipeline for $20 million. So we have pipeline that we cannot fund given the resources that we currently have that we would like to. The funds that I'm talking about in terms of the loans that have been committed or closed to date, that covers 178 units of housing. Of that, 146 are deed restricted as affordable at an agreed upon affordability level. And of the pipeline, we have another 14 transactions that have been approved at our board level, but not yet closed. Those loans are almost entirely, with 2 exceptions, all turn-the-key land bank disposition deals, covering 82 units of turn-the-key housing affordable as the deed restriction is written, at 80% to 100% of AMI, but with the turn-the-key buy-down, effectively affordable at 50 to 60% of AMI or below, depending on mortgage interest rates. So we've got more than, I don't want to say we've got more than we can handle, but we've got a lot. And all of this pipeline can be funded if we have the resources.
Can you quantify the number of developers that have taken advantage of the program?
Yes. Of those 24 transactions that I'm talking about, either closed and deployed or committed, there's 24 developers, 22 of whom are black or brown-owned businesses, and then we have a couple nonprofits in the portfolio as well.
Okay, awesome. I think, Jamie, how many did you have? Because you came and got like 10 developers deals out of this or something like that? 9?
In Mantua.
Okay. Okay. Last question before I turn it over, and I think it's an excellent program, but just always good for transparency to show the data that the program is actually working. And we're addressing equity in terms of who gets to develop, because a lot of times it's the usual suspects that are coming to our office and the individuals who really don't have an opportunity to participate because of capital are always shut out. And so I think this is a great, robust program as long as we continue showing how the numbers are benefiting those most in need. And this last part, I know we talked about the union component at some point in time. I know there will be an agreement, and obviously, Rob, we will want to see it at council in terms of what that process looks like, in terms of moving forward, in terms of how we engage in the agreement and partnership with the various union bodies that are going to support this initiative.
Yes, we understand that, and we definitely will involve council.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes the chair of Housing, Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier, then Councilmember Kendra Brooks.
Thank you, Council President. Before I get into my questions, I want to quickly come back to the point of information around basic systems repair. The spreadsheet shared this morning shows us that this proposal actually decreases funding for BSRP in FY26. The total figure is $25.5 million in FY26 compared to $32.5 million in FY25. This is for what is probably our most popular program that Dave Thomas said we have 7,000 homeowners already waiting in line, and we're proposing to probably more than double the number of eligible homeowners who can apply. So I just want to make sure that all of us hear that and that that's set on record. Moving on, 8,000, thank you. Moving on to my questions, I have a similar concern about the adaptive modifications budget. We know that as of March, Adaptive Mod had a 1,700-person interest list and almost $14 million worth of repairs that haven't been initiated because it ran through its FY25 budget so quickly. And so I think if Mayor Parker and City Council want quick wins to keep people in the homes they own, I would argue that clearing the Adaptive Mod wait list is probably the best investment we could possibly make in FY26. When it comes to ways to reduce displacement risk for vulnerable communities, preserving home ownership, and increasing economic opportunity for our small contractor base, it doesn't get much easier than this. So can this budget be increased to reflect that in your revised plan? And next, I love that there's funding in here for acquiring occupied multifamily housing, because that continues a pilot that I helped start with an acquisition RFP from back in 2023. But $5 million across 4 years is such a small dollar amount that it can render this investment almost meaningless. We know from our previous RFP that we need at least $50,000 per unit to meaningfully extend affordability, sometimes a lot more than $50,000 per unit. So as proposed, this only gets us a couple dozen units per year at the most. This piece does not feel entirely thought through. And so I wanted to ask, what you all think about that, and if we can put more of an investment, something like like $20 million per year, in a way that would actually move the needle. Can you give us your thoughts on that as well?
So first, I'd like to back up and recognize that the funding for basic systems repair, the number that is represented on that spreadsheet doesn't include the MPI contribution to that. So that number that's dedicated to BSRP is actually higher last year. And, again, understanding that there's a chance.
Last year it was higher?
It was in FY25, it was higher.
But in FY...
It's higher this year with the contribution of home funds than it was last year. So, I mean, I think you're quantifying the number that was dedicated in FY25, and that number should also include MPI as well.
Can you clarify that for the record and give us those comparisons?
Yes, we'll give you the breakdown,
Yeah.
but I do know that we did not cut funding to BSRP. We'll give you the breakdown. We can definitely do that. Your next question was around adaptive modification program, looking to invest additional funds there.
We're definitely open to having that conversation about what that number looks like. And I think that, just to give you a sense of where the adaptive modification, that was $7 million invested last year, and that yielded 382 homes. So, we're looking to make sure that we are expanding that. We're making sure that that number increases based on current investment and proposed investment in the home plan.
My point is that even with the spending from last year, we have a 1,400-person interest list. We have a substantial amount of outstanding work. And so it just goes back to the way that we're divvying up this money. And instead of making sort of major investments in programs that are really popular and that really work in a way that can get even more of an impact, we're spreading it out very thinly. So the question was to explain the rationale for that and to perhaps consider a different way of appropriating this money.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember, I have the numbers right here, thanks to Ally pulling it really quickly. So for fiscal year 26, it would be $9 million in proposed home bond funding, $13,906,000 in CDBG, $551,000 in Housing Trust Fund, and $16 million in NPI, which brings it to a total of $35,457,000 for BSRP in fiscal year 26.
And what is the total number for FY25?
The total number of what?
What she's asking was,
You gave me the FY26 number. Can you give me the total number for FY25?
the spreadsheet that we have here doesn't have that, but we will get that to you. Absolutely. So,
Okay, and I
we will
think
do that before we leave here.
I think the point is, if we have 8,000 people on the wait list, if we're expanding AMI in a way that probably doubles the interest in the program, then the investment in the program needs to consider that or should consider that.
Yeah. Yes, I think we agree. The challenge is that this is the case for a number of programs that are highly used and there's a lot of need for, and there's limited funding. So
Well,
I think
800 million can be a lot, but it depends on how we divide it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that there is more need than there's funding available.
I think we also agreed before we went on break earlier that should council come back with additional funds, we won't say no. We'll be very grateful.
Somehow I doubt that'll be on the table, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our
I'm
Chair
sorry.
of Housing.
I'm so sorry, Majority Leader. We do have the FY25 number that we promised to get to Councilmember Gaultier. May we state that for the record?
Sure, please
Thank
state
you.
that for the record, and then I'll make a very quick announcement.
Thank you very much.
FY25 is $32,457,000.
Good. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much, and thank you to our Chair of Housing, Councilmember Gaultier. Colleagues, as of this time, we have 7 members in the queue. We have a Committee on Appropriations hearing slated to begin at 4 p.m. I'm respectfully requesting that we all keep our questions to 2 minutes so that you can get all your questions on the record for a very quick and expeditious response. Thank you also very much for the accommodation. The Chair now recognizes Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you so much, Council Member. I have a bunch of questions, so I'll put them in writing and request them, but I have one I have to put on the record because it came directly from my Constituent Services Director around programming. And it's about Build to Last. She said there are approximately 2,000 people on the current waiting list. Will they be serviced before they reopen the application process? How many homes have been completed as of today? How many homeowners have complaints with contractors' work? And will Build to Last receive sustained year-to-year funding through the Home Initiative? If not, why not? And will the Mayor's office commit to finding some other source of sustaining the funding for Build to Last?
So I think we can get back to you in writing on.
We do have Emily Shapiro here from the Energy Authority to answer that question.
And Councilmember, do you have any additional questions you'd like to get on the record while we're waiting for Emily?
The other one is about, and I've asked this in before, but we saw New Orleans basically sweep away every person experiencing homelessness into warehouse during the Super Bowl. Will you commit to refusing to warehouse people experiencing homelessness in the upcoming 2026 celebrations?
We will answer the 2026 question regarding homelessness as soon as Emily Shapiro answers the question. We'll call up Cheryl Hill. Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, Emily Shapiro, CEO at the Philadelphia Energy Authority. Hey, everybody. Councilmember, we're not aware of any funding through this program for Built to Last, but we hope to talk to folks over time to figure that out. Right now, we have completed about 237 homes. We have 430 homes in progress right now. So all of the funding that we've received from all sources, from city budget, from whole home repair, from philanthropy, and our own program revenue is all committed at this time. So we have no additional funding to take any of those 2,800 homes off the wait list.
Thank you so much. And what about contractors? Do you have a way to kind of figure out contractors that did not live up to the responsibilities around this program? And are people being made whole, or are we eliminating from the service pool or uptraining?
Absolutely. We've had a handful of complaints around contractor issues. They have 100% been resolved, and every customer is made whole. So we don't leave anybody without work done. And if that means we have to bring another contractor, we do that.
Thank you so much.
So the question is, are we sweeping away or hiding people that are houseless in preparation for 2026? And the answer is very simple. No, we are not. But we have our director of OHS that is here to answer that question more comprehensively.
Thank you, although I think your answer was very clear. We do not and will not hide anyone who's experiencing homelessness because they are all Philadelphians as well. What we are working on is making sure that our shelters have dignity, are clean, safe, and sanitary for everyone who needs to use them, and we'll continue to do that. We're also working in partnership with various departments in the city of Atlanta to make sure that we have services and wraparound services and other housing support, as well as some of the wellness ecosystem. We're just making sure that we also have those.
And can you explain where some of them...
Philadelphia, sorry. I came from Atlanta.
I got you, I got you. I followed where you was going with
Yep.
that. Can you specify where the money from homelessness prevention will go? The money that's allocated, where exactly is it going?
Sure. So homeless prevention is about making sure that people do not experience homelessness. So in some cases, we're using it to help people pay back rent. We may help with security deposits, or we also do some diversion to make sure that they are able to stay housed with family members. We also will sometimes, if they're not Philadelphians, make sure that they get to where they need to go through the Stranded Traveler program.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Brooks. The chair now recognizes Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. I just have a couple questions that could be really helpful for residents who are interested in the Turn the Key program. How do you plan to market the Turn the Key program to moderate income residents, just residents in general, in this budget process? I mean, in this home initiative, a lot of people are interested in it. How do you find ways to get the word out to the people that you're trying to target?
Well, I mean, right now, again, it being an existing program, there is already marketing mechanisms in place. I believe there's an open house this weekend, but I'd like to call up Angel Rodriguez to talk about their existing strategy around marketing and what they're looking to do on the horizon.
Great. And as he comes up, I just want to ask you, Jesse, if you could explain, a lot of this work is going to be upgrades to the housing initiatives that we're doing in the city. Can you provide, and it's important for like efficiency and accessibility, can you provide how much of the budget will be allocated to technology upgrades within the Department of Planning and Development?
Sure,
particularly to help with application processing, data sharing, and service delivery across housing. Those are my only two questions.
Sure, so I'll let Angel answer his question first, and then I'll pull up this information that you need as far as what we're doing.
Thanks, Jesse.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Angel Rodriguez, PHTC, Land Bank. We utilize a high-touch and low-touch marketing process. High-touch being we have a team of outreach personnel that go out weekly, go to local churches, faith-based groups, community centers, and then host meetings with actual developers, bankers, and community members just to explain the Turn the Key program. Then the low touch would be media buys. We're on SEPTA. We use radio like Word Radio and other radio stations. We do print ads. We do typically find community partners, depending on where we are targeting to do our outreach. And we also partner with a lot of our developers and local nonprofits and housing counseling agencies to put out flyers and make sure that it's getting out through a whole network throughout the city.
And Jesse?
We are committing $1 million to operational and programmatic efficiency assessment. Within that, we will be looking at how we can improve programs within our systems, not programs, the systems within our particular departments to figure out the best way to stand this new effort.
A one-stop application process, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so we are also working, to Jesse's point, very closely with our OIT department, led by Melissa Scott Walker. We have some of those capabilities already in-house to begin to have that application, that one front door application already. And some of that is already built into her FY26, to their FY26 budget.
And a lot of that has been identified through our executive order process, which that report does specify where there might be where there might be a need for some system upgrades or reformation around the process of developing.
Thank you. I just want to say that's great to hear, because I know the first thing residents are going to find out, how do I apply for all these programs? It's too many.
Yes.
Can I just do one spot? So that's really good. And I'm willing to help you all with the marketing. I can give you a list of agencies that are serving our neighborhood that you could send the information to for Turn the Key, and hopefully they can get the word out to.
So I would ask thank you, and any council members. We're trying to build a calendar out of where we should be reaching out. We've been in the 8th district. We're going to be in the 2nd district this weekend. We've been in the 3rd district. So if you have any ideas or places where we can go, where we can actually do the outreach for appropriate people, like people who are interested in Turn the Key, we will definitely send our team out there.
Yep. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Phillips. The chair now recognizes Councilmember Harity.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you all for being here all morning. I know it's been a long morning. Just real quick, this should be it. How many full-time jobs do we estimate the Home Initiative will create?
So we're estimating 41,500 full-time jobs. And I'd like to call up Emily Persico, our Deputy Director for Development Services, to talk about the quantification effort around that. Emily? And what Emily will get into the detail is how we came to that number, specifically around looking at our own kind of track record of projects coming out of public sector.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Emily Persico, Deputy Director of Development Services, Department of Planning and Development. How we quantified that is that we looked at a combination of LIHTC projects, which track the hourly time spent by construction workers. So we looked at that for both new construction and also for preservation projects. And then we basically extrapolated that. And then we also looked at a study done by the National Association of Home Builders, which quantified, it was basically like an economic impact study of local areas of construction. And we were able to quantify that for single-family housing up to 4-family housing. And then we basically applied that to the numbers that were predicted that basically the money would be spending out on for home building.
Okay, and the 41K in jobs, what does that look like? Are they union jobs? Can you describe some of the positions we're going to have? Are they new jobs? Are they existing jobs that we're just planning on? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, we looked at it in the sense of job creation, numbers of jobs generated as a result of the goals that we've set out. So they very well could be the union jobs, but I mean, again, that number was quantified based off job creation as a result of our target goals for development.
We can get back to
But
you
we
on
can
that
get back
because
to you to figure out, I mean, not to figure out, to confirm what that breakdown would be with the details that you're asking
Yeah,
for.
we'd just be curious. You know, for us guys in the trades,
Yep.
this is
Yep.
big for us.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, and for
just
us-
trying to make sure that, you know, it's nice that we're building houses, but we also have people working so that we can put them in those houses.
Right, right,
So,
right.
you
Well,
know,
I mean-
I think it all kind of goes together.
I mean, there's some preliminary thoughts we can already confirm, like, you know, there are LIHTC jobs, LIHTC projects that will require prevailing wage. So there will be prevailing wage components to those types of jobs. But we can get that breakdown for you. And, you know, this number that we're talking about, we've ran that by the trades community here in Philadelphia.
I'm sure you
Yeah,
have.
we have. We've done our
My
due
boss was
diligence.
back there somewhere.
I want to recognize that on record.
Appreciate that. All right, and then the only other thing, real quick, is the new housing initiative expands eligibility for 60% to 100% of the area's median income. How many additional Philadelphians now expected to qualify for these homes, and what will the application process look like, particularly regarding credit score and stuff like that?
I mean, I think we take a page from our own book about how we review applications like that, understanding that there might be some circumstances around the, you know, creditworthiness and just kind of things that affect our constituency. We've taken those steps in relaxing certain requirements around other application programs for applications. So, you know, we recognize that it's something that's a variable that we need to bake in. And your other question was?
Well, it was in regard with the credit checks and stuff like that. That's what I'm just worried about people getting approved.
Right,
because
right.
I've been through the process. I know how it is.
And to the tune of what we commit to providing in more detail, we can definitely get the numbers on the current wait list, and not just the current wait list, but folks that have been denied, and that'll help us quantify or continue to quantify how much more this is going to provide access, how many more people this is going to provide.
I mean, we're the government. I believe that we
have
could
that
set the
number.
credit score,
Yeah.
you know, ourselves.
Yeah, that's based on
and
census
make it
tract
so
data.
people can
Right
actually get
here.
into these homes. That's all.
Yeah, we'll get that to you shortly. That's easy to run just based on census data, so we can estimate eligible households.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. We're the government. We don't need to make money. We also don't really, you know, the thing is to get people in housing. So the easier we can make that process, and that credit score means a lot. You know, anybody that's going through the process knows, you know. So thank you, though.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Harity. The chair now recognizes Councilmember O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had a clarifying question as it relates to the Basic System Repairs Program and Built to Last. It's kind of been addressed several different times. I'm honestly a little bit more confused now on the back end than I was before. So I'll let that one rock, and we'll see what we get. But I do have a question that I want to clarify around funding for proactive inspection that I think Mr. DeBoe came up to answer at the beginning, especially considering that Ms. Brooks underscored that this plan is proactive, not reactive just before the break. I understand that there is a very small increase in funding for L&I, but that doesn't answer the question, what I really mean by my question of why we aren't investing a significant amount of this home budget into preventing our homes from falling into conditions that need repair. We could spend less than $10 million annually to hire 110 inspectors to CM Harity's emphasis, good, family-sustaining union jobs that would proactively keep homes in good condition. Why aren't we doing this?
Yeah. Sorry, here we go.
The staff positions that the city's taking on are not included in this home plan budget. They're not being funded out of bond funds at all.
And I know that we also addressed that during earlier, but in terms of L&I staffing, as you saw through the home executive order response that we've made public, whether it was, you know, L&I quality of life, both sides of the house of L&I, you know, they were at the table doing the assessment, looking at what are the barriers, what are the red tapes, what do we need to be successful. And so in our budget that we proffered, even with our FY26 proposal, is reflective of that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember O'Rourke. The chair now recognizes Councilmember Landau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all still for being here. Appreciate you. I want to ask about the expansion of the shallow rent program. The shallow rent program provides an additional subsidy of up to $500 per month to cost-burdened low-income tenants in affordable housing units to cover the shallow gap between the 30% of their monthly income and the cost of housing. The subsidy goes to affordable housing providers to reduce the tenant portion of rent. My understanding is that the shallow rent program serves 300 households per month, and 80% of shallow rent participant households rent low-income tax credit units, and most units that are rented are affordable at 50% of AMI. So I'm glad to see there's additional funding for the shallow rent program through this initiative. And can you share how you arrived at the amount of $8 million in additional funding? How many new households do you anticipate will participate in the program with that additional funding? And can you share how many eligible households that will cover? And essentially what I'm really asking is, what is the overall number of cost-burdened affordable housing renters that exist in Philadelphia? And will the $8 million in new funding fully close the gap?
So I'd like to start off by recognizing that the tenant-based shallow rent program that you're asking about proposes to serve 1,000 households in this particular bond funding effort. I will defer to Mark Dodds to talk a little bit more about what that number has looked like historically in usage, to put it in more context for you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We did conduct a study in-house in collaboration with PHDC that helped us to arrive at a figure. You're right, this isn't going to erase the total need that exists there for our low-income populations in the low-income housing tax credit units. That population allowed us to kind of get a number that we could wrap our heads around, that we could think about increasing. So right now, our shallow rent program is funded with $2.69, I believe, million in housing trust fund money. This proposes to, it almost doubles what goes towards the program. And it's not going to get us all the way there, you're right, but it is going to make a sizable dent. It is going to build on an existing successful program. And we have an RFP out right now. So we are looking for applicants to respond to that. And one of the things I'll note too is that the program has been historically undersubscribed. So what we want to do when we award new applicants through this RFP process is to increase the number of people, because we're not currently serving everyone we could, quite frankly, and we've noticed some gaps in the program that will allow us to maximize the funding under the home bond.
But we've already established we have a tremendous need in the city to help our lowest income Philadelphians attain housing, but this plan expands the shallow rent program to units that are affordable above 80% of AMI. So I'm just curious, I didn't get the actual figures that I wanted here, but in essence, we have a significant, we have a housing crisis for our lowest income folks in Philadelphia. We have a great program that will fill the gap so that they can actually get into tax credit subsidized places. I'm sure we need to do more work on that. We will all roll up our sleeves and do more work on that to make that happen. But I don't think the answer is to expand it up to 80% of AMI for folks who could actually have many more choices of where they can live.
And I think that's one of the assumptions that we're working to prove that's actually not true, because you can't just look at AMI in an isolated vacuum. You know, we may be making the same, let's say myself and my colleague Greg are have the same earnings, but beyond our income, I may have more cost burden because I have more people outside of the traditional dependents relying on me to meet their basic needs, right? So we are looking, yes, at AMI, and that's important, but that's one of many different factors. And so I think it's just, what we're doing is saying AMI is an important factor, but there are factors beyond that. But to that end, I'll kick it over to Greg to talk about that.
Yeah, no, again, I think we all agree that the existing shallow rent program is a great program. I was honored to be involved in launching it. And we're pleased to be putting more resources into it. Again, it would be great with all of these programs to have the funding to 100% address all of the need, across everything from BSRP to AMP to shallow rent. The goal, though, which has actually been a goal for a long time, was to expand the program into a portable voucher that tenants could use outside of low-income housing tax credit projects. So I do want to set the record straight on what the new program is that it's creating a voucher that's outside of LIHTC projects. And the idea is, yes, to expand the income eligibility so it can include essential workers like city workers, teachers, nurses, and others to be able to afford a quality property. The funding that we put in for the expanded shallow rent would provide for about 550 tenant-based vouchers to allow access for either low-income households or middle-income households to access apartments.
I hear you. I need to ask one more kind of companion question to show where I think the need needs to be. I wanted to talk about the PHL Housing Plus program. It's really an innovative project. It's been on NPR. HUD has talked about our program. It's so great. It's a pilot program that I believe is ending soon. Do we plan to continue the program? If not, what's happening to the households in the pilot? Is it just ending? If so, can they receive support going forward so families who have been receiving a cash transfer that helps them pay their rent aren't left with nothing after a program we used to invest in just ends? Again, gotten a lot of press about this throughout the country, and all of a sudden, this is something we know works. We're giving cash to folks to help them pay their rent. It's ending. I believe we don't have an answer for it. There is an entire category of folks who I believe are going to be left out of this plan. I am all for $800 million investment in housing. I cannot wait for this. I want to be a part of this transformational change that we're doing in Philadelphia. But I think we're making a mistake at the bottom, and we have to put the focus on it now.
We have made the case that we're not leaving out the bottom while also thinking about teachers and firefighters and nurses and municipal workers. We'll continue to demonstrate that and answer the questions that you have, but it's really important that I dispel that notion that by focusing or expanding the focus that we're forgetting about those who are considered the least of these. That is not the case. That is not the case. Just because someone is low income and we're expanding or increasing the AMI doesn't mean that we're not prioritizing someone that is low income anymore. What we're saying is that we can expand the prioritization, and we attempt to do that, and I believe that it is a very sound proposal through this proposal. But I'll kick it over to Greg. I'm sorry, Dave.
Please forgive me, because I've just walked back in from a board meeting. So if you could tell me exactly your question, so I can be specific.
The question was about the PHL Housing Plus program. I believe it's ending. And what's the plan? It's a pilot program that has gotten great success around the country and a great press. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia is on the map for it. It's ending. What's the plan? And what are we going to do with these families who have been receiving cash to help them stay in their houses?
Well, that's a good question. Been working with some of the philanthropic folks that have funded that program to try to extend that deadline beyond June. We're certainly not just going to leave the families with no support. We're actually working with a couple of the partners, PHA included, because those individuals actually are on the waiting list for Section 8. That's how we identify people for that program. So those folks, hopefully, and in some cases throughout that study, I want to say about 20% of the folks received vouchers during the study. So they were dropped out of the program during that period. And so we're working with our housing providers to see whether or not we can find a way in which we can get them steady, stable housing.
Okay, we'll follow up on that one. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Landau. The chair now recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick questions. There's a lot of information to hear about education and things like that to keep property owners informed, but is there any programs to help out the home seller, right? So earlier in the conversation, there was a talk about, how folks get the predatory calls and, we want to allow folks the opportunity to get all the equity that's in their property. Does the home initiative include any programs to help property owners in these gentrifying neighborhoods maintain or educate them on the equity in their properties?
So the one program that does speak to that is the home appraisal bias, looking into that, and we have that housed in DPD right now.
So I think that's appraisals, like with appraisals and bias in that particular industry. I'm talking about, is there a specific program to help the actual homeowner understand their own equity in their own property?
I mean, outside of the home appraisal bias task force.
Outside of that setting.
Outside of that. I would like to call up Kathleen Grady, who can talk to how that program that we do house around home appraisal bias does speak to other elements outside. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually,
We're going to call up.
I'm going to actually call up our new director of home appraisal bias, Andy Toy. Sorry.
Hi, Andy Toy here.
Hey, Andy.
And your question is, I'm sorry.
So essentially, is that what in this home initiatives is geared toward property owners to educate them on their equity in their properties in some of these gentrifying neighborhoods, or not gentrifying neighborhoods, just the neighborhoods throughout the city?
Okay, I understand that. One, we've talked about this earlier, housing counseling is very important. So working with agencies that we already have the relationships with, that's where they will get that education around equity and how to utilize that if they're looking to sell a home. So that's the first part of that question. And we know that there are organizations that we've worked with. Councilmember mentioned Esperanza earlier. Clarify is another organization that we've had a longstanding relationship with through financial empowerment and CEO that does that work as well. But that home appraisal bias is also really important. And if we can, just really quickly, because I know Councilmember Majority Leader asked us to be succinct, I've asked Andy Toy to come up to talk briefly about that.
Sure, and just to follow up on that, there is funding in the home program in the budget for outreach and education. So part of that will be towards homeowners, part of that's towards the other industries that are involved, the appraisers and the bankers and even the city employees that are involved in the process. And we just had a meeting this morning, day 17, by the way, for me. We just had a meeting this morning about how we do that, how we can better do that outreach and the materials that we have to put out there. So we're at the beginning of it. We're in the middle of it, I should say, but we are working towards that goal.
Thank you. And one final question about the pre-authorized disposition. Like how does one get on that list, and will that list be rolling?
It will definitely be a rolling list, and we'd like to talk much more closely with council about how additions are made to that list on a very consistent basis. And we'll talk about the time frame around making additions and deletions from that list as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Member Young. The chair recognizes Councilmember, she's not here. Gautier.
Thank you. I wanted to ask that you get us clear budget numbers for housing counseling services for FY26 compared to FY25. We've heard multiple references today about their importance to the success of this initiative, but it's really hard to tell based on the spreadsheets that we have how much money is specifically slated for housing counseling agencies in FY26.
Absolutely.
I want to get all my questions on. Next, can you tell us how much of MPI's allocation for Turn the Key has not been spent yet? I ask because from what I can see, it looks like Turn the Key is the only housing production program that the home plan proposes to increase. But if we still have MPI money left over for Turn the Key that hasn't been used yet, I wonder if the allocation for Turn the Key, as much as I love it, needs to be $100 million across 4 years in order to maintain its success. Also, if we are going to expand Turn the Key funding, is this an opportunity to make our terms a little less rigid so that we can perhaps partner with nonprofits such as Habitat for Humanity or explore other creative housing typologies that we haven't been able to get to so far, such as owner-occupied duplexes?
So, good afternoon. I can take the first one on housing counseling. It's been discussed multiple times throughout the day. It's very clear how important this is for the residents of our city. I believe we operate somewhere around 24 housing counseling agencies through all parts of the city that predominantly located in low and moderate income areas, but there's definitely a good distribution. Currently, it's about 10 million that is funded through housing counseling, through various initiatives that support various programs, but all told, we're in for about 10 million in FY25. In FY26, we intend to add somewhere around 2.8 million. A lot of this will go to help alleviate the money that's going away, the CDBG CV money that we had during the pandemic that was supporting counseling operations and other related operations to prop up eviction diversion and related programs. So in FY26, I think we're closer to 13 million.
So we're increasing the budget for housing counseling by about 3 million?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. And then can you speak to the Turn the Key amount? This is a wonderful program, but I think it amounts to about 10% of the total home budget. Can you talk about how much we have left for Turn the Key and if it needs to take up such a substantial amount of the home budget, being that we're in here going back and forth about other programs that also need funding?
Angel Rodriguez, PHDC. Can you clarify the last part of your question? Why does it have to be I didn't.
It's I think the only housing production program slated to increase through home. I think we have it in the budget for $100 million across 4 years. But I also believe that we have money through MPI that we haven't spent yet. So when we consider the money that we still have, does it have to take up as substantial an amount of the budget, particularly when we're talking about all sorts of programs where there's a high level of demand, where we're drastically expanding AMI, and where we don't have enough resources?
Okay. So currently, Turn the Key has an allocation of $42 million for the mortgages. We have, we've expended $14.1 million. I will tell you that the $42 million will not cover the approved 102 properties that were approved. Okay. So to give you an idea, just to reach the 802 properties that have been approved through the process, we have 400 under construction, but we have another 400 that have to get through entitlements. We would need an additional 18 million just to get to the 802 number that we have right now. So if we were going to hit the original goal of 1,000, we would need an additional $33 million. Now, I know that we only have a small balance on MPI, and there are very, I think, valid competing interests. And I think that's why we were talking about that. And also there's an issue with MPI that you have to be aware of, that you have to build that pipeline and maintain the pipeline of development, because between the approval phase and then getting your permitting phase, getting to settlement, you know, all right, factually, we started in 22, we got contracts done and shovels in the ground in 23, and then we started seeing a lot more production and sales in 24. So we need to maintain that lead time. So I think that's why we have that kind of allocation and that transition.
Thank you. And just in closing, I want to reiterate Councilmember Landau's point. I think it's a grave mistake to let PHL Housing Plus fall off of a cliff while at the same time expanding shallow rent to 80% of AMI. And I'd also ask that you provide council with a rationale for why we would take that program to 80%. You talked about the idea that that 80% AMI, that folks at this level are cost burdened, but I'd really like to see that and understand what we're basing this proposal on. Thank you, Council President.
Council President, could I just make a quick point?
Sure.
As it pertains to Turnkey being called out as the only program that is dedicated to production, I don't believe that's the case. We have two more programs that we're looking to, one, continue around affordable housing production, making sure that there's some gap financing available for those types of projects, but then also something that we're looking to invest and expand in around affordable housing preservation, which is the neighborhood-based preservation. So, these are two things that we also have, and that's in addition to...
Increase, just to clarify, I said it's the only housing production program that we seem to be increasing in terms of the budget numbers.
Okay. Well, we are increasing the affordable housing preservation program and dedicating funds to that as well.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Rulandau.
Thank you. It's my last round. Wanted to first shout out Philly First Home. I like that. That is, thank you for investing more money in that. It doesn't cost us much to give folks a nice down payment amount for their first home, so I want to put that out there. And, but want to shift over to something that I think you said you didn't want to talk about in the beginning, but I got to put it out there. We rely heavily on federal funding for all of our housing programs. Vouchers, housing tax credits, all kinds of financings. What are we going to do if those are cut? And how are we going to be able to pivot? And how are you expecting now to pivot and shift with all of this money that we'll have in the home initiative to cover those cuts?
I think we had a point of clarification regarding the FY 25-26 numbers. Greg, can you speak to that? And then we'll talk about we'll answer your question, Rob.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is that there's 32 million for Turn the Key in fiscal year 25 and also proposed 32 in 26. So it looks like it's going to be stable funding. Just point of clarification.
I thought I was curious.
It's going to be stable funding between 2025 and fiscal 26. Turn the Key.
No, I'm not sure.
I'm talking about the home budget. Are we not allocating 100 million for Turn the Key over the 4-year period?
Yeah, but if you look at the fiscal 26, there's a column just for fiscal 26. It keeps stable funding between fiscal 25 and 26.
Yes, I'm talking about over the life of the program.
Okay, we can discuss this one further.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello again. So your question was about the impact of federal cuts. It's a concern, obviously, that we share and live with every day as grants are announced that they're stopped and then they're back and then websites go down. But we think that uncertainty makes this program even more important, that investing in housing in this essential, as you talked about it, even right, it becomes even more important when there's uncertainty about what the feds do. And I think the question about how do we replace federal funding, obviously we don't have the ability to replace everything we get from the federal government. In 24, we got $2.2 billion. We don't have that capability. We do have to look really kind of on a case-by-case basis as things come in and figure out what to do while making sure that we have prepared ourselves, which is having that Federal Reserve, having built up a budget stabilization reserve fund. It's kind of getting ourselves in position to try to handle it with the knowledge that we can't replace all of it.
But to be clear, would you tap the reserve to fill the gap by a federal funding cost before you shifted the money that we would, that we have for the home initiative through the bonds?
Sorry, say that again. I want to make sure.
I'm curious if there's a plan B right now. We're about to take out we're going to get $800 million through bonds. That's great. We're going to have these great programs. But what happens if all of our federal funding for our housing is cut? Are we going to pivot with our $800 million and try to fill some of those gaps? Or is the plan to hit the reserve and just keep going forward with exactly what the plan is on our 800?
So if
I could address that one. Okay.
Let me just say one thing first. So if we have issued our bonds, there will be restrictions on what we can do. So we would not be able to pivot and say, we're using this $400 million, we're taking it away from what we borrowed for and what we told you here and putting it in different places.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so just, obviously this is a challenge that cities all over the country are facing. And in my current work, I'm working in a number of cities that are facing the same issue of uncertainty with their federal entitlement funds. And I'll also say there are a number of cities that are issuing bonds right now in order to make sure that they have funding available specifically for housing. So Philadelphia is a leader nationally in terms of being in that pool of cities that are being very proactive and making sure they have funding. I know the administration's had some conversations with local philanthropy. And one of the things that's been discussed, not committed to, but discussed, is potentially providing a backstop for lost federal funds, especially for some of the most essential activities that would have immediate harm if those federal entitlement funds were cut.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's really helpful.
Real, anything else you may have? Good. Councilman Dr. Nina Mott.
Thank you, Council President. Actually, this last answer kind of alluded to the question I had, which was about leveraging philanthropic community, private capital, and our union partners. Do we have a very clear plan for that? And not just to backstop the federal potential loss, but to see what part of this plan can we depend on those dollars for and what that might look like, and how concrete are those?
Yes, so we're currently in negotiations, so it's not final yet, but yes, we are in negotiations, in working through the proposal with both the unions and then working with our philanthropic community, who both national and local, who have already affirmed, that the need for this and the importance of it. One thing I failed to mention earlier is that, happening just a few miles from here at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia is the Economic Mobility Conference. And there was data released by Dr. Raj Chetty with Harvard University to substantiate the need for the crisis now, and the need for the investment to counter or address the crisis now. So absolutely, though, we are thinking through that.
Do we have a dollar figure that we're looking for, like a match or to come from each sector? Do we have some numbers? That would give us, this is a huge investment. So
yeah, we have some preliminary numbers. So yes, our goal is through the philanthropic community and the trades to bring in an additional 100 million, upwards of 150, if not more.
And there are banks that have set up separate funds to look at these issues, to look at the private sector. So we talked philanthropy and unions. I'm looking at the private sector, and we can't let them get away without participation. And I just wondered how detailed the effort has been there, particularly because there have been set-asides made for investment in urban centers.
Yeah, we've been having discussions specifically with banks as recently as yesterday. So it's their ongoing discussions.
So we would love to see, I heard 100 million from unions, but that's like a little drop in the bucket at the moment. So I would love to see what that number in total would look like. And when you are able to share that, we would love to have the Council President get that information, because that gives us a lot more confidence in how we're going forward, because it's having other partners who will have skin in the game. I mean, this is how we just need to proceed.
Yep, and one of our guiding principles here was to be leveraging other people's money and to use what we're putting in to build other investments. So we completely agree with you.
Thank you, Council President.
To Rob's point, right, that support for that 800 million will go a long way, right? It will signal both to local and national funders that the city council, the administration, that we're serious about addressing this crisis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Last question, and we'll be wrapping up for today. Jesse, on the 30th of October, that's actually my birthday last year, we had a housing committee, housing development and homelessness committee hearing. And during that time, you mentioned that the assessment that we're going to be doing for the land bank will be done by the end of the year. And so just want to make sure we're on track, because that was the statement then, October 30th, it will be done by the end of December 2024, and we're in now pretty much going into the summer of 2025, and RFP, has the RFP gone out?
The RFP is active.
It's
It
out
is
now.
active, and it's set to close on May 1st. And we're hoping to sign off with a third-party vendor by July 1st of this year. And I completely own up to that on day 4 of my job in this particular position, committing to something like that, but also understanding that there were
You're
larger
enthusiastic, that's cool.
Yeah, day 4 of the job, and understanding that there is a lot more that goes into that process-wise, which is, what we've had to navigate through to get to this particular point, but also understanding, as our chief of staff indicated earlier, that we wanted to make sure that that process was congruent with the administration's initiatives when it comes to rolling this particular plan out. So it's been timed accordingly as a result, but do recognize what was stated on record on October 30th on my 4th day of the job.
Council President, I think what you're asking for, if I'm correct, is an early birthday gift, to which we say, okay, we got you.
No, it's cool. I'm just making sure we roll in the right direction, I'm supportive of the
We're rolling in the right direction,
I'm
sir.
supportive of the initiative, just doing our due diligence. And so we're going to do a callback, right?
Great.
We'll make sure we get the administration the actual date and time of the callback, so we continue doing a deeper dive, right? And with that being said, I do thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being here. I do thank the mayor, right? We talked about this early on, about the process and even additional hearings, because she wanted to do a deeper dive herself. I do want to say that publicly as well. And so we're in alignment together in terms of approaching it that way. And so because this is such a significant initiative and a huge borrowing, we want to continue to allow my members to have the opportunity to do a deeper dive. And so we will let the administration know when that actual date is. And thank you all for being here with us today.
Look forward to that. Thank you very much.
With that being said, the chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson for a motion that the public hearing and meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Tuesday, April the 29th, 2025 at 10 a.m.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Jim Hardy likes to say second before I even get a chance to move forward. This public hearing and meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Tuesday, April the 29th at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and this motion carries. The next hearing will be on April the 29th at 10 a.m. in City Hall, room 400. Thank you, everybody.